Hello, Lucy and Conrad and Caleb too. Y'all were asking about the Wasp, who is in reality Janet Van Dyne, and I thought that you might like to hear the story about the origin of Janet Van Dyne as the Wasp, and also you can hear a little bit about the origin of Henry Pym, who became the Ant-Man. And since we're talking about an Ant-Man and a Wasp, I thought that Spider-Man might like to sit in. What do you think? Is that okay? Well, let's go. Well, here's the front cover of the issue, and as you can see, it's Ant-Man and the Wasp battle the creature from Cosmos. Look at that. It's an ugly, big, outer space creature. But this is the first issue when we meet the Flying Wasp, Ant-Man's gorgeous new partner in peril. So let's get into the story and see what happens. Here's another picture of Ant-Man and the Wasp and the creature from Cosmos. Let's read and see what the editor has to say. Throughout history, there have been men who have become legends, men who have possessed powers beyond mortal ken, so that in time, those men have become superheroes who thrill the entire world. We are about to tell you of such a man, the scientist known to the world as Henry Pym, but known to you as the astonishing Ant-Man. And you will see him find a companion to aid in his solitary fight against injustice, tyranny, and crime, the companion who will become known as the Wasp. Okay, come with us now as Ant-Man and the Wasp battle the unhuman thing from beyond space and time, the creature from Cosmos. Okay, so here we see Henry Pym, the scientist, and he makes a resolve to strike back at all of the rottenness wherever it exists. I am a scientist. I will use my talents, my knowledge to find a way. And so, alone, he threw himself into his work, driving always to keep the past from his mind. A man pushed beyond the limits of scientific reason, and he discovered a gas that enables him to shrink. He says, it works. The reducing gas works. My theory is correct. Living cells can be reduced in size by chemical means, and my growth gas will enlarge them again. And he quotes the Bible. He says, "Go to the ants, thou sluggard." It rang in his brain over and over until that fateful day when Henry Pym became the Ant-Man. All right. Whoops. So he remembers this story. He says, yes, I became the Ant-Man and developed clothing of unstable molecules to wear. Those unstable molecules will shrink and grow as his need demands. He says the cybernetic helmet provides communication with the ants. All this and more, but it's still not enough. Too often I have come close to defeat. I need a partner, someone to stand by, to carry on if someday I meet defeat and death. But who? Who can I ever trust to know the secrets of the Ant-Man, to know my true identity? I don't know, but perhaps someday I shall. Perhaps someday I shall find the one, and when I do, I must be ready. Work. Yes, I will work. Find the way to equip that partner to aid me in my work. For weeks the scientist works, taking little nourishment or sleep. never pausing. And then he says, yes, it's true, the cells of the wasp can be made to specialize, to grow as legs or wings or antennae, but only in a life form of miniature size. Wait, what is that noise? Oh, it's the doorbell. Impatient at the interruption, Henry Pym goes to the door. What is it? And there is a man, and he says, ah, you are Henry Pym. I am Dr. Vernon Van Dyne. You are quite famous, Mr. Pym, so I have come to visit, for we are both scientists, and perhaps we have much in common. Yes, of course, come in. And then he introduces the young lady. He says, this is my daughter, Janet. How do you do, Dr. Pym? Dr. Pym is quite smitten by this young lady, but he thinks she's not much more than a child. She thinks, he's quite handsome, but scientists are such bores. I prefer the adventurous type, not those dull intellectual bookworms. She has no idea, does she, what an adventurer Henry Pym really is. But Dr. Van Dyne continues. He says, Mr. Pym, I must confess that my visit is not merely social. I think perhaps you can help me. I have been working on a gamma ray beam to pierce space and detect signals from other planets. If there is life out there in the galaxy, perhaps through my beam we can make contact. Dr. Pym says, I've heard of your work. But he goes on, Doctor, I'm afraid I can't be of help to you. My field is molecular cell transition and cell specialization. Dr. Van Dyne says, I know, but I thought, you see, the beam needs strengthening to reach. But I see you're not interested. I understand, Mr. Pym. Each man to his own field. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you. Janet says, let's go, Daddy. He says, yes, yes, of course. Good night, Mr. Pym. And Dr. Pym looks at Janet and says, if she were not such a child, she seems very young to Dr. Pym. So Henry Pym returns to his work on specialized cells, pausing only to tune in with his fantastic cybernetic machine to electronically impulse messages from the vast army of ants that roam the city. So this cybernetic machine can receive messages and send messages to ants. And so he hears trouble on Temple Street, but the police have it well in hand. No need for the Ant-Man. Dr. Vernon Van Dyne continues with his own experiment, and he's up here on the roof of this tall building. He says, I've got it. Yes, the booster is pushing the rays deep into space. Janet says, Daddy, I'm going out, somewhere there where there is music and laughter and gaiety. But the narrator says, these three humans do not suspect that soon they will be tangled together in the web of fate as they confront the most awesome menace ever let loose upon our unsuspecting world. Dr. Van Dyne says, my rays are going beyond our own galaxy, reaching into the depths of space to other galaxies, other worlds, star worlds we cannot even see. But you can see Janet is not interested. She's walking out the door. But Dr. Van Dyne sees something. He says, what is that? A darkness, a fluidity, flux, whirling, coming closer, closer. I don't understand. Something vast, shapeless, yet with form, following down the path of the rays. It's, what is it? Oh, and look, Dr. Van Dyne is blown away by something powerful. The doctor looks at the thing that is in the room with him. His senses reel. His face turns ashen, and everything human within him cries out in agony against this alien thing, a creature so unearthly that it is almost more than human eyes can bear. What are you? And now we see evil, a presence that fills the room, conscienceless, hostility emanating from it like a cloud of snakes. The thing answers in a slithering voice that is no voice, that is a touching of the human brain with waves of meaning. The creature says, I am from the planet Cosmos, deep in space. We of Cosmos are a fluid form of life. I escaped down the path of Uray to this, your planet. And Dr. Van Dyne realizes, escaped? And the creature says, yes, I am a criminal, the greatest Cosmos has ever seen. Alone, I almost succeeded in smashing Cosmosian society, making slaves of them all, but I failed. Now I am safe here. Here I can do what I failed to do on Cosmos. Of course, I must smash your machine to keep any from following me from my own planet, and I must dispose of you. No one knows of my presence here. Look at me, Earthman. Look, look. Silently, the scientist fights, keeping his head turned from the monster, knowing that to look is to die. But the alien power of the creature from Cosmos is not to be denied. Van Dyne's head turns slowly, slowly, until he perishes. The creature says, it is done. Later, Janet returns home. She says, what is that awful mist? Seems to be coming from Daddy's lab. Dad, are you there? Dad, oh no! I must have help. I must call somebody. But who? I don't know anyone. Wait, Henry Pym. He's a scientist too. Dad trusted him, and so she runs to the telephone. Henry Pym answers. He says, yes, this is Henry Pym. Janet Van Dyne. What? Your father? Oh, you want me to come now? And he thinks, those bored society playgirls are all alike. But it's pretty gruesome for her to get her kicks by making up a horror story about her father. He says, lights are flashing on the cybernetic board. It means a message is coming from the ants. I have no time to play games with a spoiled young lady like Janet Van Dyne. What? Van Dyne killed? Then she wasn't acting. It's true. The ants are communicating to Henry Pym that indeed Dr. Van Dyne was killed. Quickly, Henry Pym releases his reducing gas. He says, but this is not a job for Henry Pym. It's a mission for Ant-Man. And so we see how small he is. Look, he smokes a pipe, but that gives us an idea about how small he is. And so he reaches his device that will propel him into the air. He says, I'll send electronic waves through my cybernetic helmet to summon all the ants in the vicinity to meet me at Van Dyne's laboratory. The catapult will get me to my destination in a hurry. I just set these dials. Then Ant-Man triggers the ingenious catapult mechanism and a moment later shoots swiftly through the air. He says the ants will be waiting for me to form a soft platform for me to land on. And so Ant-Man cannot fly, but he's so lightweight that his catapult can propel him through the air. And then when he arrives, he lands on a soft pile of ants. He says, good, now to find the girl and see what caused Dr. Van Dyne's death. So he arrives at the window and sees her. There she is, unaware of my presence, because of course she's weeping because of the loss of her father. He hollers up at her, "Hello, I'm Ant-Man. Perhaps you've heard of me. I've come to help you." She says, "I have heard of you, but I thought you were only a myth. My father, he's dead in his laboratory." You see, she doesn't realize that Ant-Man is Henry Pym. She says, "There was a strange mist. I came in and found him." Ant-Man realizes he's been murdered. Almost looked like he died of fright. There's something strange, something eerie here. I can sense it. And the machine, I suppose it was his ray machine. It's wrecked. But what kind of thing could twist and smash heavy metal that way? Something unearthly, of awful menace and terrible powers, completely alien was here. But what and how did it get here? Janet says, "I loved my father. He was the finest man on earth. I never showed him how much I loved him. I thought it wasn't sophisticated. Now I'll never have the chance. But there is one thing I can do: avenge him." Call it a woman's intuition if you wish, but I know that it was his experiment to reach outer space, to communicate with other life forms on other planets, that was the cause of his death. Somehow I'll find out, if it takes the rest of my life to do it. Ant-Man thinks she's changed. The bored, flighty shell she wore is gone. She has determination, strength of character. I wonder if she might be my partner. He says, "Listen to me and ask no questions. Phone the FBI, ask for Lee Kearns, and tell him what happened here. Then go to Henry Pym's laboratory immediately. Trust me and do as I tell you." She says, "I do trust you, Ant-Man," and so her fingers dial the number. You'll have to ask your daddy about those old-fashioned telephones like this one in the story. He thinks, "That's strange, the ants have gone. They're all down below. This is the first time they've ever left me. Well, I guess I'll have to shinny down the water pipe." Meantime, Janet says, "FBI, I want to speak to Lee Kearns." Seconds later, Ant-Man finds his way down to the floor and he says, "Why did you desert me, my friends?" And suddenly there's a strange stirring among the ant horde. Mandibles click. See those prongs in front of their faces? That's how they communicate. The mandibles click, and the outer skeleton armor of the insects moves with self-conscious muscle pull. Then the huge soldier ant sends out its message waves. The ant says, "The creature that was in there, the mist it left, it contains traces of formic acid. It must be kin to us, the ants, for we secrete formic acid too, but it is alien and we are afraid." "Well then, take me back to my laboratory quickly, and you will spread out. Try to find some trace of this creature, and some of you will go to the FBI offices and send me a message of what they find out." Back in his laboratory, Ant-Man releases his growth gas so that he can return to a human size. He says, "And now to wait for Janet's arrival. I must greet her as Henry Pym." Seconds later, he hears Janet at the door. "Perhaps I was wrong in asking her to come here to carry out the plan I have in mind. Perhaps." But he throws on a robe and meets her at the door. She says, "Dr. Pym, my father." But Henry Pym says, "I know, and I know you want to avenge his death. Are you really serious? Would you risk anything for justice? I must know." She says, "I meant what I said. I shall dedicate my life to finding his murderer. Coming here, I had time to think. I wish I could help track down all the criminals, the human wolves who prey on honest people. I suppose you think I'm just a foolish female." And then Henry Pym says, "Come in here into my laboratory," and shut the door. And so he reveals his secret identity to her. He says, "I'm going to tell you what no one else in the world knows. In so doing, I put my life in your hands. But I tell you because I need a partner, and I have chosen her. I am the Ant-Man." Janet Van Dyne says, "You? But of course. How else could you have known about? But you said you have chosen a partner?" "Yes, I can make you small as Ant-Man with my shrinking gas. And to my research in cell specialization, I can give you wings, antenna. I can make you a human wasp. Yes, Ant-Man and the Wasp. We will find your father's murderer and bring justice to all who need it. What is your answer, Janet Van Dyne?" What would your answer be? If you had the opportunity to become a superhero, to shrink down, to grow wings, and to fight evil and fight for justice, would you answer yes? Let's see what Janet Van Dyne says. She says, "Yes, I say yes. Show me how, and I will stand behind you always to avenge my father's death. I swear it." Do you see those synthetic cells in the microscopic field? They are specialized cells. I can implant them below your skin tissue. It will leave no scar, but when you are reduced to the size of a wasp, you will grow wings and tiny antennae. She says, "It all sounds so unbelievable, so wonderful." Yes, it does sound unbelievable and wonderful. And look, now she's attired in a strange scientific outfit. And she says, "All I feel is a tiny pinprick. How long does it take?" Pym says, "Just this long, Janet. The specialized cells are now in place." Meanwhile, at the building that houses Dr. Van Dyne's laboratory, people are running because there's an earthquake. "Run, it's an earthquake." Someone says, "Help!" A policeman says, "Keep back, the building is collapsing." At the docks nearby, here are the dock workers. One says, "Hey, feel that, Joe? The whole dock is shaking. Seems to be coming from behind us." "Look, over there. What is it?" The fella says, "Run, run. Yell to the others to get off the docks." And so the world first meets the creature from Cosmos. See how gigantic he is, how he threatens everyone by destroying the buildings. Meanwhile, in Henry Pym's laboratory, he says, "Electronic impulses coming from my ant scouts. Janet in the closet is a costume woven from unstable molecules that will expand and shrink as you do. I have a feeling this is our first mission." Yes, I have that feeling too. And so here we have our first glimpse of the Wasp in her costume. Cybernetic units in the machine translate the incoming signals into human speech as Janet Van Dyne dons her new costume. Look, her headpiece forms a stinger like a wasp, and she's dressed in red and blue like Ant-Man. Well, what do you think, Conrad? You've been stung by a wasp, so you know how powerful a tiny wasp can be. And so Janet Van Dyne is going to have a lot of those same powers, okay? But she'll do her work for good, right? She won't hurt good people like you. All right, so the ants are communicating to Henry Pym. FBI says Van Dyne killed by a strange element akin to fear. The entire system ruptured. FBI, police, military called out to fight alien menace. The Van Dyne house is smashed as though by a giant hand. Docks nearby are uprooted, smashed. And so Henry Pym can see what the ants see, and it's on this screen. An alien thing is advancing toward George Washington Bridge. The police clearing Manhattan. Military standing by, ready to fire. Oh my. And so Ant-Man says, "This is it, Janet. That is the thing that killed your father. Somehow your father's space probe machine brought that unearthly menace down to our planet. Here, don this belt. The cylinders contain your reducing and growth gases. Press the bottom button like this." Oh, I see. The miraculous vapor engulfs them and they shrink, smaller and smaller and smaller. The Wasp says, "Oh, it feels so weird." Ant-Man says, "You'll get used to it, Janet." And as she shrinks to minuteness, gossamer, dainty wings sprout from Janet's shoulders, and delicate, tiny antennae adorn her forehead. The lovely girl has truly become the Wasp. She says, "The specialized cells, they work. I can hear things through my antennae." Ant-Man says, "The voices of the insect world, as I hear them through my cybernetic helmet. Come now, you will try your wings." She says, "This is exhilarating. Where are we going?" So they're shot into space by his catapult, and Ant-Man finds his companion close behind him as he flies swiftly through the air. He says they're going to the George Washington Bridge. I've ordered the ants to gather there. Wasp says, "Ant-Man, I think you're wonderful. I want you to know, in case this creature kills us, as it did my father, I'm falling in love with you." Of course, that's pretty quick, isn't it, to fall in love with someone? I think that Janet Van Dyne is probably a girl who just likes the idea of falling in love. But I wanted to point this out. Notice on her costume, the letter W. Do y'all recognize that letter? The letter W. What does it stand for? Yes, W stands for the Wasp. Well, Ant-Man says, "No, you mustn't say that, Janet. You're too young. Let's get this straight. I chose you as my partner simply because I thought you had a reason, as I have, to fight for mankind." Okay. So, look, they're flying to George Washington Bridge, and they're joining the police and the military. And look, out in the water, here comes that creature from Cosmos. Well, the Wasp is insulted. She thinks, "So, you think I'm only a child? Well, Mr. Ant-Man, we shall see." All right. Now, Ant-Man thinks, "I must be careful lest I do fall in love with her." All right. That's another love story in the comics. All right. And so Ant-Man introduces the ants to the Wasp. He says, "This is my partner, the Wasp. You will be to her as you are to me. Now, my friends, together we'll defeat this strange menace from space." But the ants say, "We cannot aid you this time, Ant-Man. This creature, there is something about it that prevents us from approaching it. We cannot." How strange. It must be this formic acid that they share. But suddenly the earth shakes as the military batteries open fire. The creature from Cosmos has appeared, and the guns go off all at once. But, they say, nothing stops it. Shells, bullets mean nothing to it. It's terrible, formless. I can't look at it. Another soldier says, don't look at it or you're lost. Retreat, pull back, pass the word. Ant-Man says the most modern weapons won't stop it, and without the ants, we hardly have a chance. But the Wasp says, that awful thing killed my father. If you're afraid, I'm not. And the Wasp flies straight toward the towering, soulless monstrosity. Ant-Man says, Wasp, come back, come back. The Wasp thinks, I'll show him I'm not a child. Alien tentacles lick out at the tiny flying figure, reaching formless fog-like fingers like trickles of doom, but still she flies closer, closer, until he seems to draw her to him. Desperately, Ant-Man climbs atop the steel girders. He says, don't look at the thing. Turn your head. I'm coming. But the Wasp says, I can't help myself. I'm being drawn towards him. Hurling himself into space, Ant-Man seizes the Wasp's hand, his weight carrying her down away from the creature from Cosmos. He says, I got you. He saved her from being drawn into the monster. He says, don't you try anything like that again. I didn't say I was quitting. I just got to find a way to fight that thing, and I think I've found it now. I've got to rush back to the laboratory. The mist, what the ants said, it all adds up. This creature is not made as we are. It is an acid species, composed mainly of formic acid. And so they're going to ride an ant back to Pym's laboratory. Minutes later, he says, on the shelf in the closet, you'll find a 12-gauge shotgun and some shells. Bring them here and empty out the shells. She says, yes, sir, boss man. Pym says, man uses formic acid as a dye. Medieval doctors distilled the acid from ants, but modern man uses an oxalic base. And the antidote? Yes, here it is. Help me fill these shells. Hurry. What is this stuff? But look, she's taking the mixture that he's created and he's putting it inside the shotgun shells. The antidote to formic acid. Certain species of ants use the acid to sting and kill enemies. We are filling these shells with the antidote. And Janet? She says, yes. Pray that my thinking is right. If it isn't, this could very well be the end of our world, the end of mankind as we know it. Now we must become Ant-Man and the Wasp again. Are you ready? She says, you know I am. And so they release their shrinking gas and they become Ant-Man and the Wasp. But then look how small they are. Wasp asks, but now how can we carry the rifle and the shells? Ant-Man says, my friends, the ants, shall do that for us. Well, how can tiny ants carry such a big gun? Well, the Ant-Man sends out signals to the ant, and they come by the thousands. Ant-Man says, carry those, we must hurry. Where is the alien now? The ant says, Wall Street. Nothing stops him. Every weapon has failed. Well, maybe Henry Pym's weapon can succeed. And look, all the thousands of ants are able to lift the rifle and carry it. I should say the shotgun. They can carry the shotgun and the shells. So the strange procession begins its march as the fate of mankind rests on the tiny shoulders of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Well, look, there's the gigantic creature from Cosmos. And Ant-Man says, there it is ahead. Now, my friends, I do not ask you to fight this creature. Just obey my commands, and you will only take a a part in this. Up the building here to the roof. And so the ants are able to carry this shotgun up the side of the building. Wasp says, Ant-Man, what are we doing? Ant-Man says, quiet, girl. I've got to think this out. Wasp says, but how can you load it? Pull the trigger. Everything is so huge. Ant-Man says, you will find, as I have, that though you are reduced in size, you still retain the strength of a full-grown human. See? Isn't that amazing? Even though they're tiny, they still can have the strength of a full-grown human. And Ant-Man says, and now stand by with other shells, ready for me to load. But the Wasp looks and she says, here it comes. Oh, the loathsome thing. Ant-Man pulls the trigger as the ants absorb the recoil, and with the blast and charge go a fervent prayer. Boom! The shotgun discharges. But Wasp looks and says, nothing's happened. It's still advancing. Ant-Man reminds her, don't look at it. And he fires again. Boom! Suddenly, the horrible mist fills the air. A soundless screaming vibrated into nothingness. It stopped. It seems to be falling apart, wavering. Sections are blotting out. The Wasp realizes it worked. Your antidote worked. Like rotting tendrils of some evil alien plant, the creature falls, writhing, vanishing as the formic acid antidote charges into the noxious substance that was the alien being, the creature from Cosmos. Boom! One more time, Ant-Man shoots the shells filled with the antidote, and they shatter the creature from Cosmos. Ant-Man says, it's vanishing, it's fading away. Wasp says, yes, we've won, we've won. Look at how the creature is fading. No longer a threat to Ant-Man and the Wasp. No longer a threat to the Earth. Ant-Man says, we'd better get back to the lab, and from now on, you must not display such emotion. It isn't proper. But Wasp thinks he's blushing and pretending that he didn't feel any emotion at all. We're going to learn that Henry Pym doesn't like to show emotion, but Janet Van Dyne shows enough emotion for both of them. Once again normal-sized, Henry Pym puts in a call to the FBI on a telephone with a scrambler so that the call cannot be traced. Henry Pym says, hello, Lee Kearns. This is the Ant-Man. The menace is over. The people can be brought back to their homes and building can resume. Lee Kearns says, Ant-Man, listen, I want to meet you, talk to you. We're both fighting the same things. We can help each other. Look, you can't keep on going it alone. But Ant-Man says, I'm not going it alone, Kearns, not anymore, not ever again. And the Wasp looks up at him and she thinks, no, my darling, I will always be beside you. And someday I will make you realize that you love me as I love you. But until that day comes, it will be as you want it, just partners, the Ant-Man and the Wasp, fighting side by side. All right, well, this is the end of the first adventure of the Wasp with Ant-Man. What did y'all think? It was a strange story, wasn't it? About a fight against an alien from another planet. But still, we saw the courage of Ant-Man and the Wasp. Even though they were tiny, they can do amazing things. And all of us, even though we may be small or weak we also can do many important things if we just try and do the work, and especially if we're together. Okie doke. Well, I love y'all very much, and we'll have another story next time. All right? We'll talk to you later. Bye bye.